when established industry leaves an area of a city, the results can be devastating. Unemployment, long-term derelict sites, and polluted landscapes can blight the area for decades to follow. That's not going to happen in a fictional Dutch city of Noevorden. Today, we're going to be taking inspiration from Amsterdam Noord, and more specifically the neighbourhood of NDSM. This former shipyard transformed into a notable cultural hotspot featuring museums, bars, restaurants, and even Europe's biggest flea market. As is often the way in cities, first the artists move in, then restaurants looking for cheap rent, and once the area is finally on the up, then the corporates move in. And that's where we are now. This area will be a target for developers looking to capitalise on cheap land and favourable planning conditions. That said, I will be looking at retaining some of the historical industry and original character of the area, and in the end, hopefully produce another believable, diverse and vibrant neighbourhood in the city. This is the first episode of Noevorden since the addition of the officially supported editor and custom assets, and we're going to be making the most of that today by adding a few new assets that I believe should add that extra character to the city, or this part of the city that I want. But not only that, we've got some new mods to help us support the Dutch themed city, so I'm going to be going through everything as I build out the neighbourhood today. There are a couple of mods to help support the change of colour on the bus lanes and the bike lanes. The best one I found is Road Visual Tweaks. I've managed to get the colours just the way I want it. You will see here that some of them are still green. If that happens to you, just reload the game, it should reload and it should come in the colour that you want. I'll leave my settings up here for a second. If you want to copy them, take a screenshot. But yeah, pretty much perfect, bang on. It matches almost identical to Elgendo's French pack that I've been using for the surfaces. So happy days, that's going to save me a huge amount of time. So shout out to Rookie Thomas for tagging me on Discord and letting me know this one is an option. It works really well. So of course it was time to just jump back over the river and just redo some of the sections that we had built out previously in the past. I think given the demand that we're going to have come the end of this episode, because we're going to be adding some real high density buildings, especially residential, we really need to try and work on getting some of the low residential stuff, which is pretty much going to form quite a big chunk of this area of the city. So I think having this all ready to go, ready to kind of detail around and add some buildings should be pretty handy. As we swing back over to the main development area, the main island, the very first thing I want to do is just spend a little bit of time on some basic infrastructure stuff. I'm basically going on the assumption in this build that every part of the city is going to be super busy, right? It's going to be really highly densely populated, and of course we're going to be adding some industry down here as well. So that's workplaces, and this city is crying out for workplaces. Really, we don't really have any industry at all in the city. We're going to have to work on that shortly, and when we have a look at the city happiness, they are really crying out for jobs. So we will be adding some, of course, in this episode, but not enough to satisfy the city demand. But as I say, first things first, we get the infrastructure in. So what I want to do is to create a little bit of a kind of bypass bike lane here. That will connect up to the main transport links, and it will be almost uninterrupted, and it should act as a little bit of a fast lane, I guess, rather than going through the city. As you'll see a little bit later on in the episode, junctions are going to get really busy, and we need to come up with some decent solutions here if we want to try and keep everything moving. I plan on having basically maximum bikes in this city, as you would probably expect. We do of course have some real constraints in this city. We only have really 4 roads in and a couple of railways, and there's only so many roads and paths that we can have going under or over the railway as well. So the design of the map in conjunction with my choices with the wider highway basically means that we have a real challenging situation in terms of keeping everything moving, and you'll probably see most episodes when I'm building out, then a lot of time will be spent on the roads and the infrastructure. But I would suggest that if you are building out yourself and you're kind of building with surfaces and all that kind of stuff, then do spend a little bit extra time on your roads and your bridges and your junctions and all that kind of stuff. It makes a huge difference when you're looking at the overall result. Now, despite my best attempts, I have always tried to avoid really building tunnels. They're just a pain in the hoop and they usually look fairly terrible. So I'm going to try and make them look a little bit less terrible more than anything else. We use the road tools and we'll add some additional retaining walls. It does make quite a big difference. It gets rid of a lot of the jank there, and then we'll just decorate a little bit. Nothing too fancy, we'll just add some fences, whether that's net lanes or props. Using the net lanes manipulation mode, you can control the height of these, and you'll see me doing this quite a fair bit. It will go in jank when you're doing it on the edges when there's a change in elevation. So yeah, manipulation mode will move it, and then you can just individually adjust the heights of each particular node. Not too complicated. It can be a little bit of an issue sometimes just selecting the actual nodes that you want to work with, but once they're selected, it's all fairly self-explanatory once you do it. It's quite intuitive. Now, on the other side of the train station, I wanted to hook up that road. Really, it's just to add a little bit of relief to the overall road network and just kind of free up a little bit of capacity more than anything else. In the main build, I've revisited that, talked about that in previous weeks. I want to add some parking, and I want to add underground parking where I can. Again, just a little bit of decoration, whether that's trees or retaining walls and whatnot, but I certainly recommend it. As I said, it does make quite a big difference. For the underground parking, we're just going to use the vanilla roads, the ones with the built-in parking spots. Obviously they're underground, so they will need a negative elevation, and we just simply connect it to the entrance that we've built already. Now my thinking here is to build another one across the road, well across the road and round the corner, but they're all nicely, tightly packed and they're built around the existing transit stations that we have already. We have a tram stop and we have underground here, remember. So my thinking really is to just have one on each side, and in theory I'm hoping that the Sims will really just choose the one that they're on the side already, rather than crossing the road and causing extra traffic tailbacks. These roads are going to be super busy. I mean, they're really busy already, and I'm going to have to continue to work on that. The next bit of transport that I want to work on is just having a look at our trams. Now of course we don't really have our final routes set up or anything like that, we've really just got a few of them kicking about the city and picking up most of the major routes. What I want to do though is reduce the ticket price. I want to really encourage people to get on these trams. I'm not going to reduce it down to 0, but at the moment we've got about 13,000 Sims per month using all of the transport options combined, and I really want to ramp those numbers up come the end of the episode. At some point I really need to get my finger out and set up a bus route, and of course as we expand the city we'll be adding some ferries as well. So it's finally time to kick things off in the development area. First thing I want to do of course is put in the infrastructure, and it's going to be bikes first here. I decided to make a bit of a frontage road, and the reason for this really is just so I can see the bikes more than anything else and make sure that they've got a direct route through the development area. I'm going to use Sully's brickwork assets. These are available on PDX mods now. Fantastic. These are zonable, you don't have to plop them as well, but obviously I prefer plopping stuff for the main part, mainly because I have that little bit extra control and I can control the heights of everything as I go along. Now of course this area is going to have a bit of a different feel from the one that we've seen in Amsterdam. It's not going to be quite as open, it's going to be a lot more compact, and it's going to have a lot more sort of brick character and smaller buildings of course as well. I've no intention of making this an ex-shipyard or anything like that, and eventually we will have to kind of get working on the water, but I'm hoping potentially, there might be a few more things coming in PDX mods over the coming weeks. You can only hope, right? But here and there I do want active working industry. Now of course if you plop these down in your city or zone them in, then your residents that are living next door are going to have some issues with that, so you probably want to pick up the no pollution mod from Brucey Boy, make sure you don't have any problems. Trist has added a couple of Australian pubs here, and they are going to fit in beautifully within this little development, and they're going to work really well up against the brick assets that we have, and then the ones that we're going to be basically changing with some decals. The brick decals that I'm going to be using here throughout, and I've used them in the previous episodes of course as well, are by Erin, again on PDX mods. Go check them out, and if you want to try and create some really old, historic, post-industrial or even just old industrial areas, they come in really handy. One little tip for you guys, if you are trying to get these networks really up close together, what to do is just extend one of them way past the original, and it should hopefully not sort of automatically attach side by side. Now here I want to create a little bit of a block, so I am going to again just put in sort of parallel networks here, and that will enable me to at least put buildings on that will be functional. So nice little block here on the corner, I think should look pretty decent. Now one thing to note here, if you are going to be placing these buildings down, you can have a bus lane, or a bike lane rather, between the building and the main road itself. So just take snapping off, just push it back past the bike lane itself, or you can have it as a dedicated pedestrian if you want, but it will work as long as it's just close enough to the road. So that'll pick up electricity, it's got access to cars and whatnot. They'll go over the bus lane if they're delivering goods, for example, but it will work and it should give you a nice little effect. So you can go frontage road or you can just push it back a little bit, providing the network that you're using isn't too wide. Now around the back of that development, I'm going to be using the very first of these assets that I've used from the supply chains creator pack by Bad Idea, and this is the big bakery one. I'd like to kind of have twin development here, and we're going to have some nice parking in there beside it. Again, I'll be adding the brick to this one. I want to have that sort of old, post-industrial feeling, and I think the brickwork is a nicer effect for what I'm trying to achieve here. Now, come the end of the video, I am going to remove the branding here, and I think potentially we could absolutely pass that off as a big office development, couldn't we? Now, it's a good thing because we don't have any office demand, but I think the asset's a banger. I think it works together, twinning it up and then sort of recolouring it, with the decals, and it's a really unique feature, I think, in this build, and it's a welcome one as well. Now, this build took a huge amount of time to do. In fact, it took about 16 hours all in all. That's about the combined build time from the previous 2 episodes combined, and part of the reason why it took so long is me messing about with roads. Now, you're going to find things are looking super busy at the beginning. Now, the reason for that I will just explain to you in just a second. But usually I don't bother too much with the traffic mod. I only use it here and there as and when I need it to fix a specific issue. But we have a specific issue here. It's super busy, and it's going to act as a bit of a stress test, I guess, for later on. But the reason why it's so busy, both for pedestrian, bikes and traffic, is that this big huge asset here is piping a ton of traffic down it. It's not actually connected to the rest of the city, other than the perimeter roads that we have on the quay walls. It actually holds up to 20,000 citizens, believe it or not. So it's something that we're going to have to manage, and a little bit later on in the episode I'm going to kind of provide a little bit of relief and just free things up a little bit in the development zone here that we're building on today, just so I can see how things work with their own produced traffic. Now, unfortunately, I missed a bit here, plopping down some of the buildings. I didn't have the thing recorded, but essentially what I've done is I've used a couple of warehouses. We've put in Starq's not service blocks, what they're called, zonable blocks. So we've put industry blocks within that development there at the back with the warehouses. In the foreground, we've used a couple of things from the Bridges and Ports DLC. The industry building that we have there with the white walls, that is functional. The one with the little sort of courtyard, that is non-functional. That's a static ploppable, and that's going to be a focus for colourful bit of design that you saw in the thumbnail, and you saw obviously at the beginning of the video as well. One quick way of making bridges better is just build networks on top of it, so obviously we can hide that sort of janky tunnel section. The road network here is not going to be complicated. It's literally just a few sort of local access roads. I am going to hook it up though and give them access to the main sort of like transit area. They might not necessarily need it, to be honest, but I'm going to do it for now anyway, and we'll keep an eye on how things develop. And we talked about this big asset. I'm not entirely convinced whether or not I'll keep it or not. I want to see how things sort of pan out, as we build the rest of the financial district and CBD. But for now, we'll just give them some access roads, and we'll try and keep the traffic away from our development area today. Now I'm going to swing back over to our roundabout area. This was in a comment in the comment sections, and I responded that I don't usually mess about with the traffic mod unless there's a specific issue or there's a traffic problem. But this is what they were talking about. One of the lanes was a dedicated right, which was incorrect. Thank you for spotting it. I can't find a comment to share it, but thank you. That is fixed now. I appreciate it. Alright, so time to add a few more assets here. I'm going to have a couple of big industrial ones. I'm going to add a fire station, which I think is going to be important, and there is a fire station when I have a look at the real life area as well. And we are going to add another one of Trist's beautiful brick pubs. So obviously, as we saw earlier on, we have a lot of traffic coming through here. There are certain ebbs and flows. It doesn't look too bad just now, but it does get pretty busy and it does tail back quite a bit. Now obviously we know a lot of that is from the other part of the city where we have that big asset, but nonetheless, I think it's a good stress test for, later down the line when we really do start building out this part of the city a bit more. So I want to try and add plenty of asymmetric roads here. They cost nothing, they don't take up that much more space, if any at all, depending on your road configuration, but it was a little bit more complicated once we've got the trams in here. So I ended up having to mess about with Road Builder a little bit and just try and get the lanes just the way I wanted it. So problem here was that I didn't notice that I had one of the tram sections pointing the wrong way. So essentially it was like a little one-way section. Once we got that sorted out, got it rebuilt, it ended up not too bad. One thing that worked out a little bit janky though is that left lane that you see here. I want that to be a dedicated left, so to speak, and yeah, you can see the tram lines are a little bit misaligned, but it's one of them things. It's a compromise, I guess, for getting the roads just the way I wanted it. Another feature I wanted to add here was a bit more tram connectivity. As you can see, I popped out a couple of stops, but it would not, for the life of me, let me use that particular stop. Now, in fairness, it's probably not a bad thing. I wouldn't have really been able to have the red line on that route anyway, on one of the directions. So what I decided to do is to just create a bit of a route, a bit of a stop, a little bit further down towards the tunnel, and it worked out pretty nicely. Again, this sort of little connecting road, we're going to use the asymmetric roads here as and when it kind of makes sense. And on the other side, I wanted to start the beginning of our underpasses. Now, we're going to have underpasses both sides and really just get them all hooked up. I want to have all of our pedestrians and all of our bikers on that particular path network. Now, one thing I won't do is I'm not going to be putting bike lanes on the actual main road themselves. I'm going to do everything to encourage them to use that underpass. That underpass, as you can see, leads directly into our big pedestrian area, and that's pretty much how that whole sort of half of the island is going to go. Everything's going to connect from a bike point of view, everything is going to connect into that pedestrian network, and then they can use whatever roads they want to use on. Not too many vehicles obviously on there apart from service vehicles, and I think that works pretty well so far anyway as a solution. This will by no means be the final form of the underpass. This is essentially just getting everything connected. I'm going to make it look a little bit better as the video progresses. But here you can see when I'm connecting that path that it's just adding more crossings, and we certainly want to get rid of them. In fact, what I'm going to end up doing is getting rid of a lot of these crossings or moving them back or getting people on that underpass. So it works out quite well later on, and we managed to remove quite a bit of traffic. Now, one thing I'm doing as a temporary measure is just putting this monstrosity. This is going to let me filter all of the pedestrian traffic from that big asset well away from our development area. Once this has been running for a while, we'll have a much better idea of just exactly how much traffic is in the development area itself. But as you can see, the previous episode's solutions seem to be working pretty well. So it's time now to get the last of the buildings in and the last of the infrastructure tweaks. So as I said at the beginning of the video, I really want to give that impression that we've got some new developers moving in and they are snapping up the land and putting in big flats, as they always do. I want to keep these things to scale. I don't want them overshadowing the old development themselves, and I would like them to have a bit of a nod to the older buildings that we have here, like the Brickworks one. Now, one thing I didn't notice is that you can change the colours on these, so if you're plopping them, use the asset variation tool and you can kind of cycle through them. A little bit of recolouring here and there on some of the other industrial assets. I'm just going to kind of go for kind of plain grey. It's kind of what you see, generally speaking, in most European industrial zones that aren't super old or, made of brick. This little section has very limited parking, so I wanted to really add some of that. Now, I did decide to go for a bit of a mix of underground and overground. Obviously, in the industrial ones, you wouldn't expect too many underground ones. It would normally be surface parking, but obviously we're kind of right beside city centre here, and I think that it definitely makes sense to put them in. As we've got employment down here, bike parking again is going to be important, and that big asset that I kind of took away at the beginning, I wanted to find a spot for that as well, and it's going to let me continue this sort of theme, if you like, of the kind of old and the new in further episodes. Our people were crying out for improved telecom, so I've given that and they all look very happy. I just wanted to see how that affects the actual skyline itself, and I think it fits in pretty good. It's a big chunky building, but it's not too tall. Again, I'll create little shortcuts for our pedestrians and for our bikes. For this little stretch of road, I think having a couple of smaller blocks probably worked a little bit better here. I didn't want anything too blocky, and again, I really just wanted to kind of keep things in scale, but I think it's going to work really well up against that elevation drop on the road. I'm going to use a vanilla asset here, vanilla commercial asset. We get plenty of commercial demand, and again, I think this complements the big telecoms building beside it. Sort of brutalist infrastructure, architecture rather, isn't it? And yeah, I think that's a good mix. As I just said a minute ago, I'm going to just make sure that where we have the opportunity to link up the networks, then we will do so where it makes sense. And now I'm going to tweak that underground parking. We do have a full car park here, so I think a few spaces isn't going to do any harm. Now, in the previous episode, I left this little connection here running over the tram tracks. Again, another little reminder, and I'm going to continue to do that as I kind of build out the city, because you think of these things and then you immediately forget them. Now, I do have a bit of a problem here. I noticed that some of the buildings are changing, and the reason behind that is my settings have somehow disappeared with the game update, and I thought I caught them all, but I didn't get plop the growables. Unfortunately, a lot of our hand-placed buildings here on our older part of the city have also leveled up as well, and yeah, it kind of looks a little bit more generic in parts. A lot of the assets are now repeated, especially around the back of the buildings on the level 5, so you know, what I decided to do was to just go around and get the individual buildings changed over, get them back to level 1 or level 2 or whatever it was that I kind of put them in as. For the main part of the building, where we've got that sort of Amsterdam school architecture, whether or not I change them out remains to be seen. I think I can kind of get away with that. I mean, we're not really going to be kind of zooming into that part of the building too much, I don't think, on too many videos other than when we're expanding. So yeah, I think I can get away with it for now, but I might potentially go back and change up a few things if I think it's looking a little bit more or a little bit too repetitive. But yeah, but the main settings for me are plop the globals, tree controller. If those two drop off, I'm in a bit of trouble. So obviously just make sure that I've kind of, once I've changed the actual settings themselves, go back in, back up the settings and make sure that they will continue. Now, if I remember correctly, this is going to be the last big block that we're going to be putting in, and it fills a little gap here between the networks. And again, what we'll do is we'll just kind of draw a little road around it, make sure that it's got vehicle access. But having a look at the skyline of this part of the build, I think I'm pretty happy with that so far. Now, if you were wondering where I got these decals from, these are in fact from Maestro's Dutch Vanilla Theme Overrider mod. I've been meaning to put that in the playlist for a little while, but what this will do is it will basically override certain signs and certain decals that you've got in your city. A little bit of a problem with this one, looks like I'm missing some of the letters, but I'll maybe reach out and see if that's a me problem or a mod problem. But it's a nice little touch, and I think that's definitely one that will be staying in the playlist. Now, I decided to encourage people to try and not use that particular walkway, which I'll be removing in just a minute. So I thought an extra little bit of path might be the right call. On the other side of the road, I'm replacing the bike only, and I'm going to be making one of the hybrid paths, which is pedestrian and bikes. Here you can see where I've decided to put in the tram stop. Works pretty well, to be honest with you, and we are just going to be putting in the net lanes and making sure that the heights and everything are all okay. We'll just use the same technique we did earlier, use manipulation mode and move it, and we'll just get the heights just right, and that will put down the decal just exactly where I wanted it. On the other side of the road, I'm going to be using Elgendo's French surface pack here, or not pack, but surface as part of his French pack, and I think that's looking all pretty good so far, isn't it? It's quite satisfying watching it run. Again, that same technique that we have for the decals, changing the elevation, we're going to get this little underpass all coloured in now as well. Rather than changing the individual node heights, what I decided to do is just move it, and I just used the 2 object height to basically do it, and it saved a little bit of time. There was a bit sticking out here, so we'll require just a couple of extra little net lanes put in place, and we should be able to get that tidied up rather nicely. Now, we seem to have a problem. Now, this game is not paused. This game is actually running, believe it or not. Complete chaos. We've got everything backed up. Nothing is moving whatsoever. So there's obviously something very, very wrong here that we need to fix. Now, interestingly, I had a few crashes when I was adding certain assets. I removed most of the Chinese assets. I took off the playlist, and it seems to be relatively stable. 1 or 2 crashes, but not too bad. But the main point for me bringing that up is that I noticed that I had a broken node somewhere in the city. Now I did try and have a look at it with the Scene Explorer mod and the node, what's the broken node checker? I can't remember exactly the name of it. Couldn't quite figure out how to use it, so I put that on the to-do list. But I think I found it, and I think it's what's causing this issue here in the city. So if we have a look at this junction, you can see that this little white car is blocking things. So if we decide to remove this, it should hopefully get things moving again, you would think. But in fact, that doesn't actually solve the problem, and I'll show you here. So as soon as we delete one, the next one will basically just block that particular section as well. It was quite consistent, and I did sit there and delete, a few of them. In the end, what we need to do really is just delete the road that's causing the problem. So that little pedestrian street that you have there, I'm basically just going to delete that, and hopefully that might solve the problem. So as you're going to see now, once we have that deleted and let things run a little bit, everything is working as it should, traffic's dying down, everything's back to normal. I say back to normal, it's still pretty busy, but what can you do? One thing I will note though is that when I check the logs after a later crash, then there are no broken nodes on it, which is great. So up to this point in the video, it's pretty much been buildings and infrastructure and a little bit of housekeeping and firefighting. Now it's on to getting onto the interesting bit where we start making things look really good. So this is going to be where all of the detailing happens, and what I'll do in this section is I will kind of drop in and out. When there's something that's needing a little bit of explaining, I'll come in and do so. When it's not needing explaining, I'll let the music run. I will be using some new mods here, especially things that are going to help really bring the scene alive. So yeah, do stick around, hope you enjoy the music and the explanations when I'm jumping in. Where we have the older buildings here, I'm going to use a bit of a combination of a couple of different mods to try and dirty the things up a little bit. So I'm going to use the Stains and Puddle Surfaces wet pack from Piccana. I'm also going to use the Stains and Leakage pack from Sully as well. And combining these two together, we can kind of add that extra bit of grime and bit of dirt and a little bit of wear and tear, which we want. Brand new mod coming in at the same time as the editor is Sully's Animated Citizen pack. This I'll be using in so many builds, to be honest with you. What a difference it makes to actually have people sitting on your chairs and people sitting on your benches, and yeah, absolute staple really of this city, I reckon, as we build out. So now it's time to really add some character to the build. So I'm going to be using that fishing asset from Bridges and Ports, and this is really just going to be a bit of an open courtyard. So again, gaining inspiration from some of the screenshots that you saw at the beginning of the video. I want to have really plenty of graffiti pretty much surrounding this entire courtyard, and I want to have plenty of open air parking here as well. So not normally something I can be bothered doing, but we're going to do just a little bit of custom parking here as well, which I think is going to make sense. We'll be using that same animated citizens mod again to add a bit of life to the scene, and we're going to use plenty of props as well. So we really want this to be the old sort of heart of the development, so to speak, and I would imagine this would be very much under pressure for redevelopment. And there's plenty of work to be done on this one, and one thing that was quite interesting actually is when I zoomed in after we finished on the build, the actual FPS dropped so much when I zoom into this particular part of the city. So perhaps I won't be building too many of these, I guess, but we shall see. So for some of the larger open areas, surface areas, rather than using surfaces, I'm going to be using decals. I get asked in most videos what this decal pack is. This is Static Noise's Real Vision pack, so certainly recommended. We've been using that for a long time, and I'm going to be using it for the for the distribution warehouse that we have, but I'm also going to be using it for some of the sort of derelict land as well, stuff that you would expect that will be built on pretty soon. So for some of the bigger areas, we just kind of use some of the bigger decals. A lot of the edging and whatnot, I'm going to use some of the smaller ones. And again, we'll give it a sparse bit of vegetation, and it should work quite well in those open spaces. Now getting these underpasses to look good can be a bit of work, but what you can do is just grab the main node and just shift it under the road. Now you might have problems with this because the actual lip of the tunnel will run through the road itself, or it will basically protrude from underneath. But what you can do is you can either lower that node, or if you've got a decal like the tram, it will just hide it, which is pretty cool. So again, we're going to be using the net lanes, try and just even up the fencing that we have here. It's worth it, otherwise it all looks different angles and it looks pretty jank, to be honest with you, so it doesn't take too long, but yeah, definitely worth doing. And here we're going to just create a few little shortcuts and really encourage people not to use that main junction. we've got the courtyard in place, we've got the wasteland in place as well. The last sort of big remaining open area I have earmarked as a little bit of a park, and this won't be anything too fancy, pretty simple, but we'll make it functional. We'll let people kind of walk through it and whatnot, and we'll just fence it off, give it a little bit of vegetation, some ground decals, and it fills a little gap here. And it looks a little bit smarter than the rest of the development, and so it should do, because we've got some of these kind of fancy apartment buildings right beside it, and I think we would expect a bit of landscaping, especially next to these sort of fancy apartment or office buildings. So it's time to put the finishing touches on our junction here. We're going to call it a little junction, but it's kind of morphed into something significantly bigger, hasn't it? So I've just deleted the walkways beside the actual main junction itself, most of them anyway. I'm going to keep the other one on the other side. It's not that busy a road, it's more of an access road, and I'm actually going to really just encourage everybody to come down, right the way down to the bottom of the screen there, and use that one. And it means that we can filter more traffic off that main junction, fill up that street, let people walk just the same, but it means that hopefully we can get things moving a little bit smoother up on that main junction. It does seem to be working okay so far, but again, I think that's going to be a work in progress. Potentially another slip lane might be in order, but we'll, yeah, as I said, we'll keep an eye on it. So I reckon in the end, this episode actually became a lot more than what I was expecting when I began it. Although there doesn't seem to be an awful lot of infrastructure put in there, it actually took an enormous amount of time getting things just the way I wanted. It wasn't without its challenges. The road sections in particular were tricky. Getting the trams in were trickier than what I expected as well, but it is what it is. But ultimately, time spent on that now will pay off later on in the episodes. The build has got its own unique challenges, and that represents a little bit of gameplay extra over and above what I would normally expect when I'm building a city. This particular episode, especially when it's post-industrial stuff, I think it's got the real possibility to be quite generic. I guess that area could be in any European major city at the end of the day, but being able to use that bike infrastructure, the ground decals, surfaces, all that kind of stuff, we're still able to give it that Dutch feel that I really was wanting. And I reckon it's a nice mix of groundwork, decal work, building selection. We've got the new assets obviously in there as well, and new mods, which is really cool to see, but I think we did a reasonable enough job. I think in particular being able to get such a variation of assets. We've got obviously the brick residential buildings, we've got the brick old pub buildings, we've got functional, just vanilla industry in there as well, and we've got a few static propables just to kind of round things off, but plenty of detail and work, and I think that really makes the build stand out. Courtyard in particular, probably my favourite bit, to be honest. It looks class, doesn't it? Really happy with that. Now don't forget guys, this is a full series. If you haven't cut the previous episodes, go check them out. They're on the playlist on the main channel, and you can watch them all from the start. This is episode 8. And with that, thank you very much for watching. Take care of yourselves.